We are catching up with the boogeyman, but he can't catch up with us because we know where he's hiding. He's under the bed. He's in the closet. We've sussed him out. The fantastic William Bibbiani is here. I always love having him on to talk about any kind of movie, but horror is really his expertise. So I really wanted to bring him on to hear his thoughts on The Boogeyman. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We'd love to see you. We are talking about all the big summer movies, and we often have great friends in like Bibbs who are knowledgeable and thoughtful. Oh, go on. It's true.
Pshaw, I say.
Pshaw. So if you've not hit the button yet, we'd love to have you. Bibbs, please tell us about The Boogeyman.
There's something in my room. You believe me, don't you?
The Boogeyman is an adaptation of an early short story by Stephen King about a monster who lives in the closet, is under your bed, is the personification of every childhood fear about the Boogeyman. That short story has been adapted by filmmaker Rob Savage, who previously brought us the really excellent Lockdown Wave thriller Host. They adapt that short story, and then they still have about 80 minutes left of the movie, so they keep going. And now it's a story about a psychologist played by Chris Messina and his two kids. They are grieving the loss of the mother who just recently died, and that grief takes on the literal form of the Boogeyman, who starts coming after them in a series of elaborate, mostly PG-13-esque shocks. You turn on the lights. Oh, there's the Boogeyman there. Oh, no, we better turn those back off. And then eventually they realize, there's a Boogeyman. And then they have to do something about that. And then they do.
Was this a good movie?
This is an okay movie. That's how I feel about The Boogeyman. The original short story is really quite chilling, but it is a short. It's very contained. It's very small. The entirety of the short story is basically the opening of this movie, where Chris Messina plays a therapist and a really disturbed, creepy individual played by the great David Dastmalchian.
Dastmalchian?
I could be wrong.
I think it's Dastmalchian, because I have said it wrong and been corrected.
All right, well, one of us is right, and that's good. He comes in and he says, I have been accused of killing my children, and I insist that it's not me, it is a monster. And Chris Messina's like, great, I'm going to call the cops now. And then bad things happen, and now the Boogeyman is in their life. That opening sequence is really terrifying because it's just about letting someone who might be very disturbed into your home, into your space, might be a threat to your family. Very, very scary. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're wrong. But after that, it settles in and becomes kind of just the latest in a long line of horror movies. I call them griefer movies, where the monster is the living personification of the psychological turmoil of the protagonists. Yeah. And we've seen this in films like The Babadook, It Follows, and especially Lights Out, which this movie borrows a lot of the jump scare ideas from Lights Out. It is a monster that can only be seen in the dark. You turn on the lights, it's gone. It's not like Randall from Monsters, Inc. The problem with that kind of movie is that it's really, really scary if the filmmaker is willing to really delve into the sticky nuts and bolts of people's trauma. And if you're not, and if you're just going to kind of treat that as like a general kind of teen drama, you're not going to milk the greatest scares out of it. And then you run into the other problem, which is, how do you end a movie like that? Wailing on a monster with a baseball bat isn't going to solve your problems if the monster is just the personification of your subconscious. So a movie like The Boogeyman, it needs to be psychologically complex. It's not. And it needs to understand that it's not just a monster movie, but it acts like it is. And as a result, it's an okay, watchable movie. It might be a good slumber party watch because it's scary, but it's not very gory. It is PG-13. But I don't think it makes as much of an impact as the better films in this subgenre.
I think it's effective from a mood perspective for a while, right? And as you say, we have seen this sort of thing done better elsewhere, with like a Polaroid camera, right? Or like when the little girl played by Vivien Lyra Blair, who is young Princess Leia in the Obi-Wan series, she's playing a video game, and there's like a thing she does that makes a flash happen on the TV, and like that makes the flash illuminate the monster in just the briefest of tantalizing ways. There are some clever moments here and there. She's obsessed with light. Like she's
Mhm.
afraid of the dark anyway.
Right.
And this thing preys upon your vulnerabilities. So it knows that just, magically. She sleeps with this like bowling ball shaped ball of light. And there's a cool thing that happens where like she rolls the ball down this long rickety wooden hallway, and the sound design I think here is pretty effective and throughout the film. And you're just like wondering, oh God, what's she gonna find when that ball gets to the end of the dark hallway? So here and there are some scares. Once you actually see the thing, because you do see it eventually, I think it looks really cheesy. Like once you see it, you're like, oh, that's it?
Here's the thing. You never get a great look at it for more than a fraction of a second, which I think is very important, because once you see it in bright light, you're like, oh, it's kind of costume, which is not the thing you really want to do. And it's not great, which is why some of like the scarier versions of this, the monster isn't a monster so much as it is like, it can impersonate anybody, and it follows, or Smile, for example. There are some cool monster bits at the end, though. There's a cool thing it does towards the end, and I don't want to ruin it, but involving arms, that I actually thought, oh, that's kind of creepy. I haven't seen that. That's kind of fun. There are moments. There are moments of inspiration here. There's a couple of really rock-solid jump scares. You talk about how, and this is something people don't always appreciate about jump scares, a jump scare isn't just a surprise. You have to establish something. You have to establish the room is empty. Everything is safe here. But then why is the camera lingering? And so then you become uneasy in the space. And then you have to make sure the timing is different every time, because I've seen horror movies where the jump scare is literally every 5 seconds. And then you get used to it, and it can't possibly
noisy and shrieky.
Yeah. And listen, jump scares are part of it. It's a great tool in the arsenal. I've seen movies that consist of nothing but jump scares that are very, very fun, but you have to know how to use them. This movie uses them okay, but unfortunately, the actual main premise is fundamentally something that is deeply human and thoughtful. Grief. This is about people who are dealing with death and trying to confront death. You have these two girls, a teenager and a younger girl, Sophie Thatcher, also Star Wars alumni from Book of Boba Fett. They're in therapy together. They're trying to figure out how to communicate about their mom, but their dad, Chris Messina, doctors are often their worst patients. He refuses. He is not engaging with them. There's so much that isn't said. And there are little moments here and there when you remember this is a really good cast. Everyone in this movie is a very talented actor. They could be doing more with this, but instead we just get the same booze over and over again. And again, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It just never goes beyond that, and it's a shame, because the Boogeyman is one of the archetypal monsters. And yet, even though we've had movies called The Boogeyman, many a film called The Boogeyman, we had a whole franchise called The Boogeyman in the 2000s, there really isn't a definitive movie version of it the way we have like a definitive movie version of Frankenstein or something like that. And so there's so much room to really make this movie important, big, scary, iconic, and it just plays it pretty dang safe, I think.
It's a totally relatable premise. Like every little kid had that fear, right?
I did.
So we can all get sucked into this from the very beginning. The performers are all really good in it. Yeah, Sophie Thatcher is good, especially in the beginning when she's just going back to high school with her grief and doesn't know how to deal with people. Like she
had the worst friends in the world.
Yeah, her
like
friends
your mom died 2 months ago. Why aren't you over it? Jeez, Janice, what
Why
the
are you wearing
hell?
your dead mom's dress? That's creepy.
Ah.
Anyway, so yeah, it has some potential. I agree with you, but it just feels kind of flimsy and kind of inconsistent. So what's your number then?
I'm going to give this, I'm going to give it a 5.9.
Okay.
Like not a wash, just middle of the road, better than totally average, but unremarkable. If you want to see a great Rob Savage movie, please see Host. It's fantastic, but this isn't great.
I'll say 5.5. So yeah, Boogeyman is in theaters. If you dare sit in the darkness, he likes the darkness.